States also agreed today, and further work will be done on this, working to identify how relief can be provided for tenants in both commercial tenancies and residential tenancies, to ensure that in hardship conditions there will be relief that will be available, and ensuring that tenancy legislation is protecting those tenants over the next 6 months at least. That work will be done by states and territories, as it is a state and territory matter, and that work will be led by Western Australia together with New South Wales, working with all the other states and territories to bring back some model rules that can be applied in hardship cases. So understanding what the trigger might be and how, in those circumstances, that tenants would be able to maintain their tenancies. Now, I know that will mean something for landlords, just as the decision taken today means something for banks. Just like the decisions we have already taken as a Commonwealth Government means things for our balance sheets and as a people for the Commonwealth Government, as it does for the states. It will also mean something for those who, sadly, might be stood down from their employment and have to look at their annual leave arrangements and sick leave arrangements. All Australians are going to be making sacrifices, obviously, in the months ahead, and everyone does have that role to play, and that will include landlords at the end of the day for people who are enduring real hardship. It was also agreed today that putting budgets together at this time, with the great uncertainty that exists, is not something that any Commonwealth or state government should be doing. As a result, we have already decided that we will not be now handing down a budget until the first Tuesday in October, on the 6th of October. The Treasurer will be having a bit more to say about that. All other states and territories will be working to similar timetables. The idea that you can actually put together any sort of forecasts around the economy at this time is simply not sensible, and as a result we will be putting in place the necessary measures with the support of the Parliament on supply and other continuances to ensure the proper functioning of government services and the continuation of vital programs. On Sunday, I will be meeting with the Leader of the Opposition and the leaderships of both the government and the opposition. I spoke to him earlier about this today, and we'll be working through those practical issues around the functioning of the Parliament, both now and over the next 6 months. And I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his support on those arrangements as we work them through. On health, and I ask you to bear with me as we go through this, and Dr Murphy will be joining us to answer questions, also make some statements on these matters. The rise in the number of cases means we need to continue to take action to suppress the growth in these cases and to flatten the curve, which is something more Australians are becoming more familiar with. That means we've got to work even harder to keep a healthy distance between us all. We agreed to further rules today regarding indoor non-essential gatherings. Earlier, I announced the 100 limit on non-essential indoor gatherings, and I went through the list of those things that were essential. I won't do that again today. It's the same list. But what we are now moving to is an arrangement for gatherings of less than 100, is that there would be 4 square metres provided per person in an enclosed space, in a room. So that's 2 metres by 2 metres. So, for example, if you've got a room, if you've got a premise, if you've got a meeting room or something like that that's 100 square metres, then you can have 25 people in that room. Now, in addition to that, you should continue to practice wherever possible the metre and a half of healthy distance between each of us to ensure that we are limiting the contact and limiting the potential for the spread of the virus. Now, these are quite practical rules. Out there in the community, whether it's licensing laws or fire laws or anything like this, there are already these types of arrangements. The number of people who can be in outdoor seated areas, that relates to noise controls. So these, I think, are very practical and sensible arrangements that venues and others and commercial premises and in public premises that we can manage. It just simply means understanding how big the room is and then simply advising how many people can be in that room at any one time. And we'd also be seeking the cooperation of patrons and others to ensure that they can do the same thing. If you're looking after your behaviour, you're saving lives. You're helping other people who are more vulnerable. In many cases, for the young and the healthy, It is true that the majority of cases, 8 out of 10, people only have a mild illness. But if younger people in particular, and those more generally in the community, follows these rules, it won't be your life you're saving because you'll be fine, you'll be healthy. But by you doing the right thing, you'll be saving the life of someone who is more vulnerable. So do it for your fellow Australians. I know these rules will take some time for people to get used to, but I'd ask people to move as quickly as they can. I know it means a lot of change for a lot of venues, whether they be cafes or restaurants or clubs or any of these other places of public gathering, including in this building here. We'll be working to ensure that people know how many people can be in the various meeting rooms in this place. Next week, the Parliament will have less than 100 people in it at any one time in the chamber. So even in essential areas, it is practical to try and observe these, but that won't always be possible. For essential gatherings, they have an even higher purpose, and in some cases that will be more difficult to implement. But if we do it more broadly, then we're slowing the rate and we are saving lives. I also want to make the point that self-isolation means self-isolation, and Dr Murphy will be speaking more about that issue. We are hearing reports of some who are saying they're in self-isolation and they're out and about. Self-isolation means exactly that. For older residents also, earlier this week we also provided the advice through the AHPPC, through the medical experts panel, that older residents should be refraining more from public contact than others in the community. That doesn't mean they need to self-isolate. It just means that they should practice greater caution than those else otherwise in the population. Now, on travel, there will be further discussion about travel issues before the school holidays. The National Cabinet is now meeting every Tuesday night and every Friday morning. That's what we've done this week, and we think that's a good rhythm of meetings to ensure we can consider all the recommendations that are coming up through our various agencies. The advice is to reconsider the need for unnecessary travel. And if you're unwell, stay at home, unless seeking medical advice. Further advice is being taken to the National Cabinet next Tuesday night, and that will be available before people go on school holidays. And so we'll be considering those issues further, and I'm just flagging that for next week when we consider those issues on a broader scale. In relation to schools and preschools, the situation has not changed. It is in the national interest to ensure that we keep schools open. I want to thank all of those schools who have been putting those arrangements in place. For those schools who have moved to distance learning for their students, I want to thank those schools who have ensured that even in those circumstances they have arranged for students of parents who have essential responsibilities. They may be nurses or doctors, childcare workers, they may be teachers themselves. They are providing for the students to be able to continue to receive lessons in that facility, and that is what we want to see happen.